Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Brawl, a new versus debate series that I've been wanting to start for a little bit. For our first matchup, we got Master Shifu from Kung Fu Panda versus Master Splinter from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. To preface this, we're doing all of Kung Fu Panda for Master Shifu, excluding things from Legends of Awesomeness because, as far as I know, its status as canon is debatable. And for Master Splinter, we're going with the 2012 series, the one that the image is from. Before we begin, I would like to mention that I am not perfect and I do not claim to be. I do have some minor skill when it comes to power scaling and versus debating. I've practiced it myself, but I am not perfect. If I get anything wrong, point it out in the comments, and if you think the outcome of this fight is incorrect, please feel free to debate it in the comments below. I encourage you to. And with that said, let's get into it. Starting off with physical strength / attack potency. Now, this is something that Shifu kind of has the edge in. He's contended with characters who are much stronger than him, like Tai Lung, Kai, and Po, and he does have techniques to lift and move heavier opponents and objects. And I forgot to list it here, but Shifu actually shattered a gigantic boulder with one blow during his fight with Tai Lung, showing that his attack potency is pretty crazy. On the other hand, Splinter hasn't shown feats of strength to that degree, but he has contended with characters such as Leatherhead and Super Shredder, as well as all four of his sons, so their strength feats could be scaled to Splinter, but he seems like more of a technique guy. Not to say that Splinter isn't. But something important to note is that since they both have techniques to overwhelm bigger and stronger opponents, I don't think strength will be a huge factor in this. I mean, obviously if Shifu lands a direct hit, it's going to really hurt, but overall strength isn't very important to these fighters. Alright, now we get into durability and stamina, and this one is a bit trickier. In terms of durability, Shifu easily takes it. He got slammed through the roof of the Jade Palace after already falling from a great height, and a kick from Tai Lung crushed him against a wall, and he was pretty much fine. Whereas Splinter doesn't have durability feats to that degree, though he has tanked some powerful stuff. But Splinter takes stamina, because in a lot of Shifu's fights, like against Tai Lung and Kai, he tends to tire out quickly. Even if he's doing good in the fight, he doesn't seem to last very long. Though it could be a case of him just being injured and taking damage, so he's starting to slow down, but I think it's more so a problem with stamina. Whereas Splinter has been able to fight for relatively long periods of time, such as in his various battles against Shredder, where the two of them were splitting even for a while and didn't seem to be getting tired at all. So durability goes to Shifu, whereas stamina goes to Splinter. Next is speed and mobility, or agility, you could say. So I think Shifu takes speed and agility, but not to a huge degree. Shifu has been shown leaping great heights and distances, and his style is focused around acrobatic movements and precise strikes. So when it comes to acrobatic stuff, he's definitely going to have the advantage over Splinter. Plus, he can easily track and outspeed Kung Fu masters like Mantis, Monkey, and Crane, who are all known for being pretty fast. And not only was he keeping up with Mantis, Monkey, and Crane, but he had two other highly skilled Kung Fu masters to track at the same time. So in terms of speed, I'd say he's faster, but Splinter does have some degree of technique to increase his speed. He's been shown moving on all fours, something that Shifu hasn't done, but likely could. I mean, there's no reason he couldn't, but Splinter moving on all fours can significantly increase his speed. So, something to note there. In terms of speed, I'd say they're pretty much equal, with Shifu having a bit of an advantage. But in terms of agility and acrobatic movements, I'd say Shifu takes it. Alright, now getting into the meat of the stew, techniques. Shifu knows basic chi manipulation, but that's not going to help him in any fight scenario, because the only thing we've seen him do is barely heal a flower. He even says himself he can barely make a flower bloom. And so, chi manipulation isn't going to help him in combat. And if it could, he would have used it against Kai, or at least attempted it. However, it's something that is important is that Shifu knows the Wuxi Finger Hold, the Nerve Attack, and the Golden Lotus Clap. Obviously, the Nerve Attack can paralyze Shifu or undo paralysis on himself, and the Golden Lotus Clap could temporarily blind Splinter. However, Splinter also uses a variation of the Nerve Attack and could likely undo it on himself, since that's how it works in Kung Fu Panda, and we know that he has experience and skill with fighting blind using only his senses of smell and hearing. He demonstrated this at least twice, so the Golden Lotus Clap wouldn't be that big a deal to Splinter. Now, for Splinter, he knows an ancient technique known as the Healing Mantra, which he uses a few times in the show to heal injuries. And he is also able to snap steel blades using his teeth, and he can use his tails and claws to increase the effectiveness of his attacks. Splinter knows a wider variety of martial arts techniques compared to Shifu, as he's kind of been shown using almost everything that he's taught his students about, whereas Shifu hasn't used a lot of the techniques he's described, although this point only applies really to Legends of Awesomeness, which again is debatably canon. So take that with a grain of salt, but just keep it in mind if you yourself want to include Legends of Awesomeness, that Shifu doesn't use a lot of the techniques he talks about in that show. Now, getting into equipment is where we start to get pretty even again. While the Jade Palace does have plenty of legendary weapons and tools and artifacts, Shifu hasn't really used any of them. He's only used his and Uguay's canes, though, as shown when he fought the Furious Five, he can effectively use anything, even a wood flute, as a weapon. This is something that Splinter can do as well, which I'll get into later. Oh my god, Discord, why? Sorry about that, I forgot to ghost Discord before I started. Y'all can point and laugh at that. So, anyway, as shown a few times, Splinter has a wide variety of weaponry within the lair, and it can be assumed that he's at least proficient with most of them. However, the only thing he actively uses are throwing weapons, his walking stick, and sometimes a bow and arrow. However, something important to note is that they can both use pretty much anything as a weapon as master martial artists. I'm having a stroke. The only thing they consistently use are walking sticks, pretty much. Though I would give Splinter's an edge, because his also has a chain, which can be used to increase his range and trip up opponents better. So I give it a slight edge to Splinter with equipment. Now for notable weaknesses. Shifu is stubborn, such as initially sticking to his normal training methods with Po until he realized they wouldn't work and he had to do something else. And also he tends to struggle in prolonged fights, like I said before, against Kai and Tai Lung, where he seemed to get tired out pretty quickly. In contrast, Splinter's mind is very well-honed compared to Shifu. He doesn't have the same emotional weakness, though he does have it somewhat when it comes to his family, if they're in danger or they need help, though in some cases this can also be a strength. And for the most part, Splinter has only ever easily defeated opponents who have less skill than him, like his sons or Bebop and Rocksteady or Leatherhead, people who don't have the same degree of technique, skill, or experience as him. Against foes like Shredder, he's shown to struggle a little bit. So, in terms of notable weaknesses, I think they're pretty much almost even, because it's pretty much just as easy for them to exploit each other's weaknesses, with neither of them having any major advantage in that department. Now let's get into their notable wins and losses. Shifu has been implied to be superior to the Furious Five, though he's never been in a situation where he's forced to fight them seriously. In Kung Fu Panda 3, he did briefly fight Crane and Mantis, but that wasn't long enough to really get any solid opinion, though it could be assumed that he would be able to defeat their zombies. He's also defeated Po when he's untrained, and has still bested him post-training with superior skill, though this was only brief sparring. And again, that's Legends of Awesomeness. I don't think they've sparred properly in the main series, but I feel like that would still be accurate if it was in the main series. Shifu was defeated by high-level fighters like Tai Lung Kai and his... Okay, this is a bit of an outlier, but Shifu struggled against Poe's dads, which I just feel like I should bring up because I find that funny, and to point out that that is an outlier, so it's not being included. Splinter has easily defeated his sons, the Turtles, on several occasions, and low-skill mutants like Leatherhead, Bebop, Rocksteady, and, a few others throughout the series. He's also fought evenly with Shredder, but he has been defeated and even killed by him in some series, and he's even been killed by him, I think, at least twice in the series we're using for this debate. And on some occasions, his sons, particularly Leonardo, have found openings in his style and gained the upper hand, though this has typically only been very brief. So, comparing this... My damn microphone decided to stop working. Anyway, he has superior strength, though it can be negligible. Shifu has superior durability, he has superior speed, and he has a slight edge in speed and a big edge in mobility or agility, and he has more versatile support techniques. Whereas Splinter is debatably more skilled, can negate at least 2 of Shifu's techniques. He has a more versatile weapon, better stamina, better fight history, and more of his full capabilities has been shown. Now, something to briefly touch on before we get into the final opinion is that just because one character has more listed advantages doesn't necessarily mean that they win. Like, sure, one character may have less advantages, but what really matters is the magnitude of those advantages. Like, if you have characters who are relatively equal, but one of them can, lift boulders while the other can lift cats, obviously that huge strength advantage is going to really matter in that debate. Just something to touch on before we get into the final verdict. So who would win? Well, Shifu has superior physical abilities just going off the scaling of Kung Fu Panda, which is much higher than TMNT, at least in the series that was used in this debate. In other series, it's much more comparable. And he also has more versatile and powerful offensive techniques, such as the Wuxi Finger Hold, Nerve Attack, and Golden Lotus Clap. 2 of these can be negated by Shifu, but the Wuxi Finger Hold is an instant win if he can pull it off. While he's debatably inferior with skill and is worse in prolonged fights, Shifu is faster and more agile than Splinter, making it more likely he could land the Wuxi Finger Hold. Splinter has several advantages when it comes, especially with the healing mantra, but with Shifu's speed and experience, it's unlikely he'd get an opening to use it. So in my opinion, I think the winner of this fight would be Shifu, but it's definitely close. If you disagree, again, feel free to have a debate in the comments section. I might even join in, because, debating is fun, just make sure to keep it cordial. But that begs the question, what about the next fight?